All right, so have you ever stumbled across like someone's online presence and you're just like, hold on a second, what's the story here?
Yeah,
That's Cruz Macias's portfolio.
definitely.
In a nutshell.
Uh-huh.
We are talking about a self-proclaimed modern-day Renaissance man, but he rocks out with a metalcore band and also leads Bible study.
Oh,
Like, at the same time?
wow.
Is that even possible?
Yeah, you're right. Online portfolios, they're like those digital icebergs. Right. You only see the tip, but underneath, who knows what you're going to find. And Cruz is, gotta say, one of the most intriguing I've ever seen. Big question is this Renaissance man thing legit or just, good branding?
Yeah, I mean, seriously, you look at his list of skills and it's like he just went down a job board and was like, yep, I can do that and that. Oh, and that too. Musician, software engineer, even a math tutor. It's the combination that makes you scratch your head,
It's like, how do you even begin to reconcile these totally different parts of him? Like, on the one hand, you've got metalcore, right? And just for those who haven't experienced the joy, think screaming vocals, super distorted guitars, basically a wall of sound hitting you right between the eyes.
Intense.
Intense is an understatement. But then you flip the script and you've got this deep Christian faith woven throughout his bio. Not your everyday combo.
It's like finding out a hardcore gamer also collects, like, antique teacups or something.
Totally throws you for a loop.
And the best part is, he knows it's unusual. He even put this whole disclaimer in there about how, like, his face won't get in the way of his work ethic.
Oh, interesting.
Makes you wonder if he's had to deal with that kind of bias before.
Yeah, that disclaimer is definitely deliberate. He even quotes specific Bible verses, emphasizing hard work and dedication. It's like he's going above and beyond to say, hey, this is a core part of who I am, but it doesn't make me any less committed to my job.
Yeah, it's like he's preemptively saying, don't put me in a box.
Exactly. So is he trying to attract a specific type of employer? Or is it just like super important for him to be upfront about his beliefs?
Right. I mean, either way, it's definitely different. But speaking of different, can we talk about this guy's music career? We've got a metalcore vocalist, which, again, intense, but then he also plays bass and acoustic guitar for his church.
Wow, what a range.
Talk about range, right?
It really makes you think, how does he reconcile those two worlds? The mosh pits and the hymns. Like, do they influence each other or does he keep them totally separate? We might get some clues from his musical influences. He mentions opening for some huge names in the early 2000s, bands like The Used and Senses Fail.
Okay, now we're going way back.
Okay.
For those of us who, weren't exactly rocking out to emo music back then.
Sure.
Can you give us a crash course?
Okay. So, emo, it's like this subgenre of punk rock, but with way more emotional lyrics. Think heartbreak, angst, all that good stuff. The Used, total classic example. Senses Fail, they lean a bit more towards post-hardcore, which gets a little more experimental, less melodic.
Okay, starting to get the picture.
But the key takeaway here is that Cruz's musical interests, they go beyond just the raw aggression of metalcore. There's a sensitivity there, a depth of emotion that we need to keep in mind as we dig deeper.
And let's not forget, he shared a stage with Jared Leto. Yes, that Jared Leto, back in the day.
Whoa, really?
Opened for 30 Seconds to Mars, can you believe it?
That's impressive. He's really been in the thick of it.
Oh, and get this. He didn't just luck into that gig. He won a battle of the bands to get there. This wasn't some random open mic night. Dude went out and earned his stripes.
Wow, so music's clearly more than just a hobby for him.
Oh yeah, it's serious business. But then, just when you think you've got Cruz figured out, we hit the serving the Lord section of his portfolio, and boom, it's like a whole other dimension opens up.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more.
This isn't just like casual Sunday service attendance. We're talking small group leader, worship team member. He even hosts online Bible studies.
That's dedication.
Right. It really makes that disclaimer about his faith and work even more interesting. He's clearly put a lot of thought into how those two sides of him, the rocker and the devout Christian, might be seen by others.
He's owning it. He's not shying away from any perceived contradictions.
Exactly. He's like, this is me, all of me.
And remember those Bible verses he mentioned? Like Colossians 3.23, it talks about working wholeheartedly as unto the Lord, not unto men. It's almost as if he's anticipating any concerns about his dedication to his career,
It's like he's saying, my faith doesn't detract from my work, it enhances it. It's definitely a unique perspective, and it raises some really interesting questions about how faith and ambition intersect in his life. But hold that thought, because things are about to get even more interesting. especially when we start looking at his creative output.
It's funny, isn't it? Like when we see a resume or a portfolio, we tend to compartmentalize.
Right.
It's like, okay, this skill goes here, that interest goes there, nice and tidy.
That put everything in its little box.
Exactly. But with Cruz, I actually think his creative work, especially his music, might be the key to understanding how all these different parts of him connect.
Okay, now you've got my attention. What do we have?
So he's got albums with titles like Angel,
Okay.
and then another one called Kill or Be Killed.
All right, so one's maybe a little more spiritually inclined, and then the other one's, well,
Yeah.
a little more hardcore.
A little more on the nose.
Yeah, a little bit.
Right.
But then there's the photographs he's chosen to like showcase alongside his music.
Right.
It's this mix of like celestial events, these huge landscapes. There's even this one hand-drawn sketch that looks like it could be from like an AI art program.
Interesting.
What's the connection? Like, is there one?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
On the surface, they seem all over the place, just like everything else in his portfolio.
Right.
But if you look a little closer, the celestial events, the landscapes, they all kind of tapped into this idea of something bigger than ourselves.
I see what you mean.
Right.
Like this vastness.
It's like he's drawn to the grand, the awe-inspiring, whether it's like the power of a metal riff or the majesty of the cosmos.
Yeah, I get you. It's like he's searching for something transcendent
Yeah.
in both his faith and his art.
Uh-huh.
But then AI art, that feels like a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Like entirely.
And that's where his portfolio takes this really unexpected turn. He's not just appreciating AI art, he's actually using it in his own creative process.
Whoa.
He even gives examples, like there's this one called Creepin' Through the Darkness.
Okay, for those of us who aren't, musicians who are also tech wizards,
Yeah.
what does that even look like? Can you break it down?
So imagine taking like raw vocal recordings, okay, like beatboxing,
Yeah.
or vocal percussion loops. So these are basically rhythmic patterns created with just your voice,
Okay.
and then feeding them into an AI program.
Right.
Cruz takes these loops and he actually specifies that these were created in 2012. Interesting.
Uses AI to reinterpret them, to make totally new versions of his own work.
Wow. So he's like collaborating with an algorithm?
Exactly.
That's wild.
That's wild.
And he's very specific about crediting the AI. Like he even points out that the original recordings were solely of human authorship.
Which I think is really interesting, right? Because there's this whole debate right now
Yeah.
about human creativity versus AI-generated content.
Right.
And he's not trying to pass this off as all his own. It's more like showcasing a new way of collaborating, like humans and algorithms working together.
That's pretty cool.
Right. It makes you think, what does this mean for the future of art, especially for music tied to something as personal as faith?
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, using AI to write a catchy pop song is one thing.
But to apply it to music that's rooted in something as deep as spirituality, that just adds a whole other layer.
It's a whole other level.
It really is. And speaking of layers, can we just take a second to appreciate how this AI thing adds yet another dimension to Cruz Macias?
Right. It's like, how many sides to this guy are there?
It's almost too much. We've got the metalhead, the devoted Christian, the tech whiz, the skilled musician, and now he's got AI art in the mix too.
It's almost overwhelming, right?
It is.
Like, is he actually this modern-day Renaissance man he calls himself, or just someone who's really talented and has way too many hobbies?
It's like he threw a bunch of stuff at the wall and somehow it all just stuck,
Yeah,
But maybe, just maybe, there's a method to all this, right?
maybe.
Like maybe this unique mix of passions is exactly what makes him a Renaissance man for, like, the digital age.
I like that.
Right.
Think about it. The whole idea behind the Renaissance was breaking down those barriers between different fields, realizing that knowledge is interconnected.
Yeah.
And isn't that what Cruz is doing? He's not limiting himself to just one genre of music, one type of art, one way of thinking.
He's not afraid to blend it all together.
He's embracing the fluidity of the digital world.
Right. He's a musician, he's a programmer, he's a man of faith, and he is not afraid to let those parts of himself overlap.
It's really cool.
It's like he's challenging us to rethink what it means to be multifaceted, to be well-rounded in a world that's constantly telling us to pick a lane and stay in it.
And let's not forget, he's doing all of this very publicly.
Right, it's all out there.
Through his online portfolio. It's like
Yeah.
he's saying, this is me, all of me, take it or leave it.
There's something really refreshing about that.
Absolutely.
In a world of, like, perfectly curated Instagram feeds and super polished LinkedIn profiles.
It's a breath of fresh air.
It really is. Cruz is showing us something way more authentic, something that feels genuinely human.
It's such a contrast, right?
It really is.
Like, we're so used to those perfectly curated Instagram feeds and those, like, super polished LinkedIn profiles.
Right, where everything's like, perfectly lit. And
Yeah, everything's airbrushed.
I hashtag, living my best life.
Exactly. But Cruz's portfolio, it's kind of messy.
Yeah, it's a little all over the place.
It's eclectic.
Great cat.
And that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah, and you know what? It's like he's giving us permission to be our messy selves too.
To just be ourselves.
Right. Like, we don't have to have it all figured out.
Right.
We don't have to present this, like, singular, streamlined identity to the world.
Exactly. He's not trying to be like the finished product, right?
Yeah.
He's not some polished influencer. He's sharing his journey,
Yeah, warts and all.
his passions, his faith, and he's inviting us to, like, engage with it.
On our own terms.
Exactly.
I like that.
Maybe that's the most modern day Renaissance thing about him.
Maybe you're right.
Right.
Yeah.
His willingness to just be himself.
When we started this deep dive,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what to make of this guy,
Yeah, he's a lot.
Cruz Macias, but honestly,
Yeah.
after spending time with his, online persona,
Right.
I gotta say, I'm kind of impressed.
He's talented.
He's talented.
For sure.
But more than that, it's refreshing
Definitely.
to see someone just be themselves,
Absolutely. He's proof that you don't have to choose between being a headbanger or a hymn singer, a tech geek or a man of faith.
Right. You can be both.
You can be all those things and more.
You can contain multitudes. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Cruz Macias, musician, artist, man of faith, tech enthusiast, what's the one thing that stood out to you?
Honestly, it's that image of him, hunched over his computer using AI to remix his own music.
Yeah.
It's that creative curiosity that I find so inspiring.
Yeah, I hear you.
It really is.
For me, I think it's the audacity of it all, right?
Right.
Like, he could add separate profiles for all this stuff.
Right, separate online personas.
Exactly. But no, he's like, nope, this is all me.
Yeah.
One big messy package.
Not hiding.
It's kind of amazing.
It really is.
And it leaves us with more questions than answers, doesn't it?
It really does.
Like, what happens next?
Right. What's his creative process going to look like in 5-10 years? Will we see more artists embracing AI like this?
It's going to be fascinating to watch, that's for sure.
Totally. It's like he's a glimpse into the future,
He is. And on that note, we should probably let our listeners ponder that.
Yes, let them think about it.
Until next time.
See you next time.